That is most of our announcements, and so I kind of want to move on to one thing that we have sort of been focusing on this month, and that is Eric. So I'm going to have Rochelle come and just tell a quick story, and we just want to make sure that we are honoring him. We're trying to honor a leader every month or so. We'll see how it works out over the year, and it makes a lot of sense to start with Pastor Eric, and so that's what we're doing tonight.
So Eric, this is about you. All good things, though. So I met Eric a long time ago at World Mission Summit, and I think one of the things that stood out to me was just his love for people, like his love for just the people around him. I was really amazed and really challenged, and that's what made me go up to him and be like, hey, I want to get a card or something. And then I moved here. But I think from just like the times of hanging out with Eric that I've been most encouraged with is just like his words of encouragement. I think the last maybe like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we were hanging out and he was just sharing stuff with me about just like life. And he's like, you've grown a lot, like more than you think. And I was like, okay. Like, but then after that, I really thought about that. I was like, man, like I think I really needed that. And I don't think I realized how much I've grown since being here. And just him really encouraging me specifically about like you loving people and you like, I don't know, just it was really needed and poignant. And I feel like all the time that I'm with you, Eric, you're really encouraging and always encouraging me to do more for the kingdom. So I'm really thankful for you and thankful that you spoke at World Mission Summit 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago. So yeah, I love you, Eric.
Excellent. Well, at our leadership meeting last weekend, I gave everyone a little token of like something that makes me think of them. And so for Eric, I gave him a sailboat. They were all like little charms. Would have been cool to give him a real sailboat, but that is not in the budget, so we got a little charm. And the reason was Eric's number one kind of talent theme in Strength Finders is futuristic. And if you've known him for very long, he looks really far out in the future. And he likes to do this not only for himself, but for other people. And so he's encouraged / forced, people to buy homes or whatever. He'll go out in the community and be like, somebody needs this. Like, you should buy this place. So, it's partially how Lydia owns her place. Just Eric, she's like, I don't know if I want to. And he's like, oh, you do. I will come fill out the paperwork for you. And then Matt and Misty were like, can you please tell Eric to stop looking at houses for us? But they are closing. They're closing this month on a house, partially because he just likes to dream big and he likes to dream for people other than himself. But the second thing, these are the two things that really kind of are like interesting about him that are the two major things that I see after 15 years of being married to him. WOO is the second one, which stands for winning others over. And this is a big deal. A few weeks ago I asked amongst here, everybody here who met Eric was the first person you met coming into the church, or the first person, and 85% of the people raised their hands. So whether it is going to World Mission Summit, which is happening, can you believe it's been 4 years? So it's happening again this year, and we might have people come around again, like Rochelle, who are amazing, who move across the country, had never seen snow before she showed up. I mean, this girl, now she's trudging in 4 feet, up to her house. I don't need a ride. I mean, she's changed a lot. But whether it's someone like that, or it's like Casey, who is here for his first night. He's one of our summer interns. So he's here from Montana / Illinois. I don't know. His home is wherever. He's from Montana State. He was here in March. So the reason that he's here is because Eric went and spoke at Montana State, got groups to come out in March, and Casey liked us and wanted to come spend the summer with us. Or it's one of you folks who we met out in the community, or it's you came a time or two, but you felt comfortable because Eric came and talked to you. I don't know. There's a million different ways. Stu is raising his hand. There are so many of you guys who would not be. It's like he's got this amazing way of going way out and pulling people in. And usually he likes to hand them off to somebody else, or at least get them a little steady and go back out, because that's what he does really well, is to go out and grab people and pull them in. I mean, there's some of you guys who would not really be in if it weren't for Eric. And so that's what I kind of want to honor tonight. Now I wanted to give him a life preserver, but I couldn't find one, so I got him this, which is also very like Eric. I don't know if this means anything. Now, I think we do have one of those too, but I did not think to bring it. Now, just pretend, babe, that this has not come from our house and is going back to our house. Just pretend this is a gift that does not belong to one of our children, and I grabbed from our downstairs tonight. And I wanted a row, but Lennon forgot it, so tell him. Just to kind of give a semblance of, going out and coming back in. And I think that we all have benefited from your amazing skill at going out. It's kind of like we just want to all grab onto that rope and pull you back in and pull all these people with you and then let you get back out again to do that because you're so great at it. So that's for you. You can sit on it if you feel like you need to. Thank you. Yes, let me take a picture of that. No, one of the things that's exceptional about him, and honestly, if you don't know Eric very well, you should. I think everybody should. Everybody does. Most people do. You were missing out. But one of the great things about him is how safe he makes people feel. Right away. I see it all the time. I do not have this skill. Like, I might elicit other things from people, but this, like, unbelievable approachability that's like, I could talk to that guy. Like, I'm in a group of people. I don't know anybody here, but he seems nice and friendly and goofy, I joked around on Facebook today. I think it was today. Was that today? About Cadence kind of getting in trouble all the time about his goofiness. I never knew our son was so goofy till he went to kindergarten. And now it's like, he's like, I got a stop sign today, which is a no-no, and he's like, because I was being goofy. I'm like, dude, it's genetics. Like, you do not stand a chance. Eric actually sat down our first parent-teacher conference and was like, yeah, he doesn't have a chance. Like, this is how DNA works, people. Like, every single thing they said, even like pushing down on the pencil, he was like, that's me. The goofy factor is just so nice, and it feels so safe. It just makes you feel like I can find something in common with this guy, or we can laugh about something together. And the nice thing now I will say about Eric, his birthday is on Thursday. And so even though we're appreciating him all month, if you have not had a chance to do that, you want to do that this week. He's going to be out of town for a couple of days, but he'll be back by his birthday. And so go on his Facebook and say something nice, or shoot a silly video and text it to him or something. I emailed you guys a bunch of ideas a couple weeks ago. Some of you guys have been awesome. People have already been doing that. People from our hometown have been posting pictures like 15 years old on his Facebook page, which are interesting. And Matthew and Laura posted that one of you. That was awesome. Just goofy stuff. So if you haven't had a chance to do it, do it. Do it this week. Don't be like, oh, I want to do something special, and so I'll wait. And don't wait. If he's made a difference in your life, tell him that. Because I got to tell you, from a leadership perspective, and I mean, honestly, 8 years we've been here. Over 8 years we've been here. It is awesome to be with you guys. But it's been a long journey and a whole lot of plodding. And for someone who is very futuristic, I cannot even imagine how excruciatingly slow this whole process of doing this thing must feel to him. It is really nice to see those little changes in people. So affirm him. Honor him. That's what we're doing, okay? So however, even if you're like, I like it when you have a beard, just tell him that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be super deep. It should be. Just joking. I like tears, but he doesn't, so it'll be fine. And the nice thing about talking about Eric tonight is that as a safe person, he sort of exemplifies what I want to talk tonight about the Lord, which is safety in God. God is a really safe place to be. I don't know if you've ever thought of him that way. I like to think of him sometimes like home base when you're playing tag. You know what I mean? There's home base, there's like a really big tree or fence or something like that that's home base. Now, what is it about home base that makes you feel safe? You shout it out. You're not running anymore. That's like, I don't think I thought of that one. Yes, Jonathan. Yes? Were you going to say something, Lacey? Exactly. You're safe from the enemy. You get to, yes, you are safe from the enemies. Nobody can get you. You get to rest a little bit, right? Kind of regroup, decide on your next strategy before you head back out. If there's strategy in tag, there must be. There's got to be. I need it. But if it is a safe place because nothing can get you, when you come into that safe zone, you can rest and sleep and be without any kind of sense of attack, right? And that's how God is to us. Is God a safe place for you? Do you really think of God that way? You know, some of us, we have this relationship with God, and he kind of comes in and out. But I'm talking about, is he that place that you can go to all the time? The truth is, a lot of times, God is not incredibly safe for us because we're afraid he's going to tell us to do something we don't want to do, or he's going to, we've finally gotten really settled and happy, he's going to snatch something away. You know, when we start having thoughts like that, we need to understand we may not completely know his character because God is a good God and he is safe. I want to read Psalm 91, and just bear with me through this. I want you to understand when David wrote this, it is a beautiful image of how safe God is and how he is on our side. So Psalm 91, whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High, think of that, shelter, will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I can trust. Surely he will save you from the fowler's snare, from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. Can you see here how many times he's talking about refuge, safety? His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart, the thing that stands between you and danger. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. Understand, all those things are real. They're happening. We just don't have to be afraid of them. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. Why? Because he's standing between you and it, and nobody wants to take up him. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. If you say, the Lord is my refuge, and you make the Most High your dwelling. Understand, if. There's an if statement. It is called conditional. There is a then statement of what you get from it. If we say the Lord is our refuge and we make the Most High our dwelling, no harm will overtake you. No disaster will come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. They will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the cobra. Whoa, huh? Like, let's not just get past that. That's crazy. You will trample the great lion and the serpent. Because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. He will call on me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. Be with him, deliver him, honor him. It's like it keeps getting better. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. If we call the Lord our refuge, if we make him our dwelling, then all these things will come to us. If not, then what? We live our lives in fear. We make dumb decisions because they're based on fear. And we don't give him the honor he deserves in wanting to be our shelter and our refuge and all those amazing things. There's two different pictures in this psalm that I want to kind of pull out and talk about tonight. We are going to take communion in just a little bit, so I want you to be thinking about that. The first one is this, a picture of safety with God, that we are under the shadow of his wings. Think about that image for a second. Get a picture in your head of what that means. Understand, these pictures of God, they're unbelievably awesome and diverse, right? That's so different than other ways that we talk about God. There's a reason that this is one of the descriptions of God. Under the shadow of his wings. That is beautiful, isn't it? This is Psalm 91:4. He will cover you with his feathers. That is cool. You're like, I don't think about God and feathers, right? Like we're not always thinking anything in throne or like awesomeness or like creation or like buddy. We're not always thinking about feathers. I mean, these are all, an anthropomorphism is like God's hands. Like we don't know if he's sitting around in a throne with hands just like our hands. It's a way to help us understand who God is. So sometimes when it says like with his right hand he will hold you, that's because we're trying to understand him. We're trying to understand God, which is hard. So sometimes, like feathers, I don't think he might be sitting on the throne with feathers, but I think more it's just trying to illustrate the beauty of how he protects us. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield. Think about that. Think for just a second. Imagine yourself standing before an enemy, and God himself and his faithfulness being your shield. Ever thought about it like that? Your shield and rampart. Let me show you a picture of a bird that is covering babies under its wings. Birds do this a lot when they have little ones. Why? To keep the sun off of them when it's too hot, to give them warmth when it's too cold, to protect them, to hide them from danger. If you look at that bird and you don't look too closely, you may not see those little chicks under there, right? You may not see that there's a tiny little vulnerable thing that could be eaten quickly. What you're going to see is the big one. You're going to see the mama bird or the daddy bird with its wings spread, not the little tiny feeble thing that could actually really be hurt. This is part of the reason that we see when we're talking about the protection of God, he spreads his wings out over us and welcomes us in. Now, how wise is it to not come? Mama bird is like, hey, there's a mountain lion right there. I don't know what eats bird. Just go with me. I'm not really sure of the food chain. I'm just making it up. There's something there that's going to eat you. Come here under me. And the baby bird is like, nah, I think I can take him. I think I can handle this foe. I'll be fine. That guy's going to be dinner. And it's ridiculous when you think about it because it didn't really have to be out there by itself. The mama or daddy bird is welcoming it in, saying, I will protect you. I will be the one that bears its teeth if you will just come and hide under my feathers. That is God for us. Isn't that a beautiful image? That God is standing around ready to protect us, ready to welcome and ready to cover us. There are tons of scriptures about this. Let me just read Isaiah 34:15. Just as an illustration, this is about judgment and God taking care of animals even when he's judged all the people. It's a crazy passage. But this is the thing that pulled out. The owl will nest there and lay eggs. She will hatch them and care for her young under the shadow of her wings. There also the falcons will gather, each with its mate. Gather and care for her young under the shadow of her wings. This is what they do. There's a reason that this imagery is there. And it's not just here. Psalm after psalm after psalm after psalm. They're in your bulletin, so I'd appreciate, well, not all of them, just a handful. Let me just read you a few. Psalm 17:8, keep me as the apple of your eye, hide me in the shadow of your wings. Psalm 36:7, how priceless is your unfailing love, O God. People take refuge in the shadow of your wings. Just go ahead and pop it up right when I start, just so they can read it with me. Psalm 57:1, have mercy on me, my God, have mercy on me, for in you I take refuge. I will take refuge in the shadow of your wings until the disaster has passed. Psalm 63:7, because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. Think about that. I'm not huddled afraid, I'm singing. Because I am so secure knowing nothing is going to get through. Think about the security, the beauty in that. How often we see this imagery of, and I could have gone on and on all day, but I won't. The word used here with the shadow, shelter, it's a lot of times it's the same word in the Old Testament used for this. It is an adjective for being concealed, secret, disguised, covered, sheltered. It is a covering or a hiding place. Think about that. Have you ever sung a worship song or read through a psalm where we call God our hiding place? He says, come on under, spend a little time with me, come a little closer. You don't need to be afraid. You need to be afraid of what's out there if I'm not covering you. I can hide you. I can disguise you. I can make you invisible to the enemy because when they look at you, they're going to see me. Check out this picture of this little lion cub. Oh, he's just relaxing. Very vulnerable. Doesn't he look kind of vulnerable with his tummy just laying out there like that? Well, show the next picture. It's because he's right there. See what I'm saying? He is not worried about anything getting him. I don't blame him. He's just chillaxing because his papa is going to take out anything that tries to get him, right? Yeah, he is piercing, looking at something, right? Like you don't want to be creeping along thinking, I'm going to take out this little cub. Now, if he were all by himself, like in the first part where you couldn't see the daddy, I'd be thinking that guy is, there are predators, even for guys like him, but not for guys like him, right? This is the image. I love this picture. See how he's just kind of like laying in the arms of his dad? He's safe. Nothing is going to come against that little cub. Now, is it the cub that has the power? No. Cub can't do anything. It reminds me of a kind of a picture of like a little cub standing there roaring and something goes running away and it's like, woohoo, I got him, but behind him is like the big guy, right? That is what God is to us. When we think about resting under the shadow of his wings, that's what he's talking about. Nothing will be able to get us. Now, think for just a second. The Message version of Psalm 91:4 says this. He doesn't talk about feathers. He's kind of paraphrasing. He says, his huge outstretched arms protect you. Under them, you're perfectly safe. His arms fend off all harm. Think about that. Strong, arms. I should have thought to post a picture. My little sister had a baby a couple days ago, and he's super tiny, like a newborn. I mean, he's not super tiny. He's 6 pounds, 9 ounces or something. But my brother-in-law is huge. Like, kid has worked out every day of his life for nearly 40 years. And his arms are like this big or something. And it was crazy seeing this picture of him kind of snuggled up with his baby. I was like, I seriously think the baby is skinnier than his arm, than Kevin's arm. I mean, it's just crazy to think of, like, something comes after my nephew, it's got him. But not while Uncle Kevin's around. You know what I'm saying? Like, Daddy is going to take out anything that comes. And just inviting you to think of his huge outstretched arms, waiting. If God could be frustrated, sometimes I think he would be, not because we've sinned or we fail, but because we don't come when he invites us. How frustrating would that be? Okay, little guy, just go out and try whatever you want. You're going to get killed, and I actually care about you, and I'm actually the powerful one. You can't take on anything, but I can. That would be so frustrating. So just think for a second. Are you, by abiding with him, by spending time with him, and by trusting him, are you coming under the shadow of his wings? I love the idea of a shadow. It's like when we are under him, there's something reflected on us. Does that make sense? I think people should be able to see if we're spending time in the shadow of God's wings. In his shadow, nobody sees us. They see him. Shadows are dark, right? They're for concealing. They're for hiding. He's the one that's supposed to shine. Do people see that when they look at us? Do they see him shining? Do they see his huge outstretched arms? Do they walk away saying, God has been changing Jonathan like crazy? God has been. Not Jonathan. God. Not Eric. God. Not the church. God. Right? In all of us. The other way that I see in this passage, a beautiful picture that I see other than shadow of his wings, is that we can find safety in God inside him as a fortress. And there are so many scriptures about this, entire stories about God as fortress. So I'll just go through a few. But first I want to so Psalm 91:2, this is, where this comes from in Psalm 91. I will say of the Lord, he's my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I can trust. So let me just show you a picture of a fortress. This is King Herod's fortress. It was like the century before Jesus. Look at that puppy. What do you think? I don't know. Sometimes I think of it as like, First Bank's building or something, a fortress. No. This is how they built a fortress. You built it way up on a cliff somewhere because you're going to get all your people in and keep out everybody else, right? That's an intense fortress. Do you think you could find your way up and into that fortress with people shooting arrows at you, perhaps? Or I'm not even sure you could get up that thing. I read the guy who took this picture was like, I've climbed this twice, and it's like the biggest accomplishment of his life to get up to this fortress. It's crazy. It's called Masada. If you ever want to look it up, it's cool. There's all sorts of like little rooms and passageways in there. I mean, it was like impenetrable. And at their best, fortresses are that. I mean, the definition of a fortress is a military stronghold, especially a strongly fortified town fit for a large garrison. I mean, sometimes they would turn entire towns into fortresses and strongholds. A heavily protected and impenetrable building. I would say that one just before is probably heavily protected and impenetrable. A person or thing not susceptible to outside influence or disturbance. That sounds like God. What do you think? A person or thing not susceptible to outside influence or disturbance. It's kind of like what Rochelle was getting at before with just not changing. Like, he is not the kind of person that something's going to throw off. You know what I mean? He's pretty steady. And that fortress isn't going anywhere. People might come to it. They might try to act on it, but it's going to stand firm. That's what God is. He is a fortress, like that picture that we just saw. Just a few scriptures about this. Psalm 18:2, the Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. Think about how many words there are in that talk about this solid nature of God. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. Now, Lord of the Rings, the two towers. what is it called? Somebody help me. The stronghold that they go to. Helm's Deep. I mean, think about Helm's Deep. I mean, they found a way in. Only because the guy knew, right? Like that there was a tiny little, I mean, it was supposed to be impenetrable. Think about it like that. Nobody's getting past this. Since you are my rock and my fortress, it's Psalm 31:3. For the sake of your name, lead and guide me. Since you are my rock, and I love how in one verse, there's a rock and a fortress that's immovable, but you're going to lead me somewhere. Like you're still going somewhere that I can follow. That's God. It doesn't make any sense. But he's God. So it does. Psalm 62:2. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my fortress. I will never be shaken. Think about that. Am I shakeable? Oh yeah, I can be shaken. He is never going to be shaken. And if I'm standing in him, I will not be either, right? If I'm standing out somewhere else, it is quite easy for me to be shaken. But when I'm standing in something that cannot be shaken, I cannot be shaken either. Now let me just give you a picture. I don't know how many times this picture has shown up in my journal. I would like to be able to say, I've gotten this all figured out, and I never struggle with this idea. But imagine that. Go back to that picture of the fortress. Imagine that. And that is an option. Okay? I'm fleeing an enemy, and I'm standing right beside that. I have arrows coming at me, and wind and rain and natural stuff and people and all this stuff, and I'm just fighting my battle and working really hard and getting worn out, but I'm okay, I can do this, and plowing through, standing right outside of that. Would that be smart? Would it be smart for me to be able to walk away and say, I got through that all on my own? Why? I mean, most of us would be like, why in the name of God would you stand outside that and fight? Nothing is getting through that. Here's the beautiful thing. God doesn't ask us to fight. He asks us to come inside and let him do it. That's all I gotta do. Is that crazy? I feel like that can't be right. You know what I'm saying? Like I hear myself saying it out loud and I write it down, but sometimes I don't believe it. I think, no, it can't be that easy. It can't be coming inside the stronghold and just going to sleep. I have to be fighting. There has to be a battle. There has to be blood and guts and possible death, you know? Or I can't, really think that. But that's the point. It's not really about us. It's about him receiving glory all the time. And so it really doesn't matter if I'm hidden in there. If anybody sees me, if anybody acknowledges me, if anybody knows that I'm there fighting. We get this sense of pride somehow that it doesn't matter. What matters is we make it. We live another day to tell people who God is without being wiped out because we were too stubborn to take 15 steps into that stronghold. Now maybe it's just me. I might be the only person here or in the world who has a hard time just saying, I kind of think I should probably just go hide in that fortress right over there. But if that's you, I want to really challenge you tonight. Nothing's going to penetrate that fortress. Lots of things can penetrate you. We're flesh and weak. We are feeble like that little lion cub. We need our dad. I love last week, I just kind of briefly mentioned God is kind of embodies feminine and masculine characteristics, and even those are quite societal, I would have to say. Think about the shelter, the shadow of his wings, and then think about this strong fortress. It's beautiful. There's so many different things we could pull out about God. I mean, we could be doing for 2 years just simple attributes about God all day long. That's why there are so many psalms. That's why there's so many worship songs. That's why there's so many spoken words. That's why there's so many poems. Because he's awesome, right? We can't really wrap our heads around it, but we can pull out these little things that tonight we can focus on and say, thank you, God. Martin Luther. Anybody ever heard of Martin Luther King? I'm not talking about Martin Luther King Jr. I'm talking about Martin Luther. He was named after one of the Protestant reformers. This is why there are so many different kinds of churches, basically. Not just Luther, but Zwingli and Calvin and a bunch of people did some stuff. And in the year 1529, he wrote a song called A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. There are lots of verses to this song, but these are the ones that really stood out to me that I wanted to read to you. This is a couple of verses. And though this world with devils filled should threaten to undo us, we will not fear, for God hath willed his truth to triumph through us. The prince of darkness grim, we tremble not for him. His rage we can endure, for lo, his doom is sure. One little word shall fell him. Think about it for a second. Not us. The whole song is about God being a fortress. The point is, we don't need to fear if we're inside. If we're not inside, we probably ought to. The prince of darkness grim, we tremble not for him. His rage we can endure. Why not? It doesn't really matter how powerful an enemy is as long as it's outside the door. We're in an impenetrable building and it's not getting in. It doesn't matter. We can be weaklings. And as long as we're hidden in God, the enemy cannot get to us. This other verse, that word above all earthly powers, no thanks to them abideth. The Spirit and the gifts are ours through him who with us sideth. Sorry for the King James Version, but this was written in the 16th century. Let goods and kindred go. So let money and people, your family, whatever stand in the way, let it go. This mortal life also. The body they may kill, God's truth abideth still. His kingdom is forever. Now that's a person sold out for God, right? Hey, they can kill the body, and they did. Like this sort of thing happened a lot. It still happens today. How do you think people are able to walk out being persecuted, being threatened for life, and still be able to say, he's my mighty fortress. I'm hiding in him. I love the story of we call them the 3 Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. It's in Daniel, I think it's in Daniel 2. It's in the book of Daniel. Here's what I love about that story. They stand up to the man. They stand up for God, and they're going to be killed. They're going to be thrown into this fiery furnace because that was the deal. They broke the rules. They're going to do it. And they stand up to the king and they say, listen, God can deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we will not bow down. He can. I'm sure he would like to, but if he chooses not to do that, whatever, not our deal. God can do whatever he wants to with my life. He can throw me in the furnace if he wants, and I can die, and then I get to be with God. Do you understand how living inside this fortress breaks the power of fear? We don't have anything to fear. What can we fear? When someone can say, the body they may kill, God's truth abideth still, his kingdom is forever, now we're getting somewhere. God can do something with that. So ask yourself tonight, are you running to him as your fortress? What happens when things go funky in your life? And let's just get practical with it. What do you do? Pick up the phone and call your sister? Turn to substance? Get itchy for some sort of affirmation or value given somewhere? Retreat? Get sullen? Get depressed? Where do we turn? When I say, are we running to him as fortress, I don't mean like, it's this mental, ambiguous thing. Sure. I mean, if that's the case, all of us are. Why preach the sermon? We should all just gone home. I mean, day to day, minute by minute, when we are terrified, when we are angry, when we are judgmental, when we want to look at somebody and wrap our hands around their throat. You know what I'm saying? When we feel horrible about ourselves, maybe because we just felt that way, who knows? When we feel like a complete failure, when we're disillusioned with ourselves, when we're disillusioned with God, when we're disillusioned with everybody else, where do we go? Everything else is like a cardboard box. It is not going to protect us. God can be trusted. I think the more we experiment with that, the more we ask him to prove himself, the more he does. That doesn't mean that everything's going to work out the way we want it to. But I think Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would have been okay dying. It sounded like they would have been. It's not up to them to decide what's supposed to happen to them. It's not up to them to shake their fists and say, you should have done this, acted this way, spoken this, given me this. That's not what a disciple does. It's up to us to come inside and to let him handle the rest. I know it probably sounds overly simplistic, but sometimes it's good to be simplistic, right? Just bow your head with me for a minute. Could you take communion in a second? I just want to remind you, I started out kind of talking about home base. Now, home base is safe, right? It's supposed to be safe. You know when you start the game that if you get into trouble, you can find your way back to that home base and be safe as long as you stay there. However, staying there is not really the point of the game, right? And unfortunately, far too many Christians, once we come close to God and we know the safety, we just want to stay on home base. We're just going to stay there the rest of our lives. What a horrible game. Who wants to play a game where everybody sits and waits on home base and never goes out and tries to play tag again? That sounds miserable, right? The point is not for us to sit there and stay there forever and enjoy the safety. The point is for us to go there when we need it and to go back out and play the game, which is the mission of God. That is covenant and kingdom, right? I just want to ask tonight, nobody's looking around but me. If there's anybody here, you say, I don't know that I'm in covenant. I don't know that I know that safety. I don't know that I've ever made that decision to kind of come inside and allow him to fight my battles. If you want to make a decision to follow Christ tonight, will you just lift up your face and look at me? Awesome. He is safe. He is trustworthy. And he is a rock. He's not going to move. And so I just want to ask everybody else, think it over for a second. Is God pulling on you at all tonight to say, hey, there is a level of this that you could probably dig into here. Even if you know me, I am not your fortress right now. I am not the place where you run to hide under my feathers. You are going to many other things, and then you're disappointed when they're not strong enough to bear you. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm the only one looking around. I want to just ask you tonight, it's just really a step of faith. I'm not even going to do anything with this except pray for you. I would encourage you, if you feel like God is calling you to this and you make a response, to tell somebody and to gain accountability somewhere. But I just want to ask you, if you feel like that's you tonight, you've been struggling with trusting God, you've been struggling with going other places, just, again, lift up your face, make eye contact with me. I would love to pray with you. Lord, we love you, even though we hardly know how. Help us, God, to shed all of those layers that we've put around us to try to convince us that we really don't need you day to day, maybe. Tonight we make a declaration, even if we only partially believe it. We do need you. We cannot live a day without you. Half the time you're jumping around all of our defenses and being our shield, even when we're not asking you to be, because you love us so much. But we really don't want it to be like that forever. We would like to be able to intentionally take you and use that strong part of you so that anything that comes against us sees you and not us. I just want to encourage you now as we're praying, before we get to communion, if God is bringing things up in your mind, there might be fear that's been planted in you in an area. There might be despair that you can't overcome, a sin or an addiction that you've been struggling with for a long time. Whatever those things are, I just want to encourage you tonight. You cannot break them. You cannot overcome them. God can. You cannot and will not do it on your own. But that fortress will. Anything that comes against it will break. And tonight I pray for addictions, for things that have held my friends back and me for a long time, God. We pray they would break in Jesus' name. They really have no power over us. Not because we're powerful, but because you are. And we're your kids. They cannot hold you bound unless you let them.